Hey everyone, welcome back to Board Game Breakdown. I am Chris Solomon, and I'm here with another video today where we are going to talk about Maglev Metro. This is a game that came out in 2021, designed by Ted Alspach from Bezier Games. I probably butchered both of those names, but Ted has designed other pretty well-known games, Suburbia, The Castles of Mad King Ludwig, and probably most famously, the Ultimate Werewolf series. You can find that in most big box stores like Walmart and Barnes & Noble, but this is quite a bit different design than that. This is an engine builder, pickup and delivery type game that really gets you thinking. So what I wanted to point out is if you are not in the mood for a 40-minute video, then click this link here to see a streamlined, what we call burst video, where you'll get the ins and outs of Maglev Metro in around 3 minutes or so. But if you want to stick around for this video, we're going to go through all the actions, we're going to go through the setup, and even at the end, we're going to talk about the solo game, which I really like the solo version of this, but feel free to use the chapter links down in the description to skip around to wherever you want to see. So I mentioned that this came out in 2021. I had never actually even seen it, I don't think, until a user on Mastodon, shout out aka Duke, who mentioned picking it up, and I was looking for recommendations. He mentioned it, I started looking into it, and it looked really cool. So I grabbed it and I've been really impressed. So basically, you are going to be taking your individual player board here and powering it with these different passengers. Some of them can be robots, some of them can be commuters. You're going to be building different stations out on the map using these really cool clear tiles to build tracks so that you can overlay them with other people so there's no blocking like you might have in Ticket to Ride. You're going to be really basically building out this subway in 2 different maps that come with the base game, and at the end of the game trying to score as many points as you can by taking passengers to their stations. So really fun game, really neat that you have to decide when to turn off the engine or building of the engine and start really going heavy into the pickup and delivery. So before we go further, please make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel right now if you can, so that you can make sure to get all the new content we put out. Please check out the website at boardgamebreakdown.com, where we host all sorts of text reviews and other little board game related articles that we put up. And you can also find us on Instagram and Mastodon and any of the social media sites. So without further ado, let's get into Maglev Metro. Alright, so let's jump right in here to the setup of the Maglev Metro multiplayer game. So we're going to set this up as if we have 2 players. There is a chapter I have later on for setting up solo. It's pretty similar, but there are some key differences. So if you're interested in how that is going to work, jump on over to that chapter. I've set up a little bit of this so we don't have to spend too much time on it, but let's just jump right in. So first thing to note is we are doing the Manhattan board. It's a little different. The flip side is Berlin. So I'll put up a quick picture there of what that looks like, but they set up pretty similarly. The main difference is Manhattan has this hub right here where the reverse map, you have 3 extra of these robot stations that you'll put out. Other than that, it's pretty much the same, so you can just follow what the instructions say. So you'll see that this board is 4 like puzzle pieces, so you just fit them together. Then you're going to want to put these tiles down. So you'll see they're big, chunky, nice tiles. So you'll slot the hub in there, and then each of these has a corresponding little spot here. So you'll just fill each of these in. Once you fill them in, you need to put the passengers on it. And so you have two different style passengers. You have these metallic ones here. These are called robots. So you have a gold, a bronze, or copper, and a silver. And then these colored ones, pink, lilac, coral, and purple, those are the commuters. So you'll see when we get into the gameplay that they have some pretty big differences between the robots and the commuters. One thing you do want to do is check out the instruction manual to see how many of these robots and commuters you will remove for your player count. So for 2 players, you remove 5. So what you'll do is over here on your player board, each player starts with one of each robot. So you'll drop them over here and put another 3 up here for yellow. And then you'll put one of each of them out. And then you'll remove the 5 and you have some left over. So you can't see them, but I've got them down here stacked up. I'll show you what we do with those in a second. Then you'll basically take your colored ones, you'll remove 5, put 1 each on the starting station, and dump your other pile there. All right, so at that point, almost fell. You want to take your cloth bag here, and what I'm going to do is all these leftover robots that are a little off screen here, I'm going to drop into the bag. So in they go. This is very exciting viewing for all of you. And boom. All right, so they're in the bag. We'll shake them up. All right, and now on each station here, it's not a station yet, but it's like a cutout for a station, there is a number of robots, and the little figures are colored, all 3 gold, silver, copper, to denote that you're going to randomly pull them out of the bag. So we will quickly fill up this board. So this one needs 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Let's just go around the board here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you'll notice that the stations here on the outside have more robots. So that it's a little harder to build to those when you're playing the game, but you will be rewarded with more robots to use, and then that should empty the bag out. So the bag will come into play again once we unlock some commuters, but until then we will just leave it there. All right, so really the last thing to do is kind of grab some other spare pieces and get them out here ready to go. So you do have these nice trains. There's just one per color. So unlike something like Ticket to Ride, where you're going to have a lot of trains, you're going to just have the one. So you put it on the hub. So we'll take our 2 colors. These other 2 I like to use to kind of help me know how many actions I've taken, because my experience is that as I'm trying to calculate what would be the best moves, then sometimes I lose track. So you can do that with other components, or you might just be smart enough to handle it without needing that. You will also take your assorted clear tiles in the color. There are curves and there are straight pieces. There are 2 curves, but they're basically the same. So we'll put those over here in a stack. You have your first player token. It's one of these games where the first player token is really nice and shiny and heavy, but you pretty much don't do anything with it. So we're going to put it over here for the blue player because he'll be the one going first. And then lastly, we have some objectives. So there are 4 different objective stacks, each with a different icon and different color, and they're going to basically give you a different objective to reach during the game in these 4 different categories. So we have these that have to do with basically different ways to lay down tracks. You have a yellow set that has the little passenger icon, and these all have to do with either having certain colored commuters or passengers or robots, or not having a certain set. You have these that have the hexagon for the stations, and these are all about building certain connections between your stations. And then lastly, there are these red sets that have multiple passenger icons, and these are about like collecting different sets on your board, either having them in certain spots or not having them in certain spots. With these red ones, I will mention that the manual does recommend that if it's the first time playing, that you do not use these, but they're honestly not that crazy, so I didn't use them the first game, but once I used them, I thought, well, that was kind of easy, so why not use them? All right, so I'm shuffling these up off camera, and I'm dealing one of each kind to the yellow and blue board over here. The other thing I'll note, it's more in the gameplay, but you don't get to score all 4 objectives. There is a mechanism where you're basically, it's built in to score 1 objective card, but then you do have to pick up commuters and place them on your board in order to trigger the other objectives. So that's kind of a neat mechanic, because most games you get objectives and it's just about meeting them and you score them. So here you do have some choices to make, which is actually pretty decent, because some of the objective cards will kind of cancel each other out. So sometimes it's not worth it to try to score all your objectives, and you can use those commuters elsewhere. So, like I said, that's pretty much the setup. The back side of the board, the only big difference is instead of this hub, you have 3 extras of these. There are 3 spaces for them, but you randomly place them down, so you can flip them over, shuffle them, put them out. And then the instruction manual tells you on the gold one, put a silver and a bronze. On the silver, put a gold and a bronze. On the bronze, put silver and a gold. It's almost the same thing, because you'll see when we play that the Manhattan hub here, you can actually drop off any of your colored robots there. And so it's basically like a having all 3 of these built right there together. But that's it for this section. So we will jump right into the gameplay, and what we will do is we will go over the actions that are over here on the board, and just kind of simulate a few rounds so you can understand how it works. All right, so we are going to look at how the actions work and how a turn works. So we're going to use this blue board down here as our main focus here. So let me move these guys off, move it up here. So what you'll see here is a couple different areas. So this section up here is going to tell you how many actions you can take each turn. So you start out having 2 actions. As you fill these rows up, and you'll see that they're color coded for the robots or the commuters. If you fill up a whole row, then you would get a 3rd action or a 4th action or a 5th action. But you can choose, you don't have to fill them up in order. You kind of pick and choose how you want to fill those up. Down here, you'll see a section of what you need to unlock these colored passengers and build those appropriate stations. So right off the bat during the game, you can only basically pick up robots or build the 3 robot stations, these 3 down here. So you have a warehouse, a factory, and a lab. So you're going to need to place robots here in order to unlock these passengers. And you'll see that both of these passengers need either a pink one or a lilac one. So you would have to, depending on which one of these you want to unlock, you'd have to unlock one of these. This middle section is going to be where all your actions are. And you're going to be placing robots in these little spots here that are color coded in order to increase the power of each of those actions. So we'll walk through each of these actions in a second, and I'll explain what they actually do. Then on the right side, you've got two sections that are only for the commuters. So you'll see that these up here, if you fill in a whole row this way, you get extra points at the end of the game for each link, which is basically between a section of or two stations. That would be a link. And if you fill in down this way and you complete that column, then each of these colored passengers you have on your board at the end of the game get you extra points. And then lastly, you have this section, and I mentioned in the setup that all the objective cards don't score. By default, whichever one scores you the most points is the one that you are able to score at the end of the game. But by placing commuters down here, and you can see all of their colors are on these little icons. You can place any color commuter here, just no robots. So if you fill this row up, you would get to score another objective. If you fill up this one, you can score a total of 3 objectives, because remember, you have the 1 by default. Each of these objectives you can only score at max 15 victory points. So some of them have 3 points per every 4 passengers. There wouldn't be any way to score, say, like 21 points or something like that. You would have to cap out at 15 on each objective. All right, so I'll place that back over there. So at the beginning of the game, this first turn is slightly different in that you have these 3 robots that have not been placed anywhere. So you do take them and you choose where on your board to place them at. So let's just pretend we're going to go through the actions shortly. But I'll say I want to place one here on this track action. And I want to build a station. So I'll put one there. And I will, who knows, capacity. Let's put it there. All right, so this would be my board starting out. And what's happening here is that as you fill in these rows, when you take your your first action you take, this becomes more powerful depending on how many how many robots you have there. Now, there is a trick to this in that this action is how you adjust robots, and by default you can only adjust 1. So on my second turn, if I wanted to spend an action to adjust this guy up here, then that used up one of my 2 actions on that turn. So what I found playing is if you're not efficient in how you're using your robots, you're going to be wasting a lot of turns adjusting them, and that's going to really cut down on the amount of things you can actually get done. So we'll pretend like we place them like this, and then we will look at all of the actions, and I'll kind of give you a sample of what each does. So this top one here is called track. So that is how we build tracks. So I'm going to grab my clear tiles over here. And when you build a track, if you only have this default printed guy here, you can build 1 track. So you might be able to do like this. So you can build from that hub to the station, or where you can build a station. You do have to build from the end of your line. You can't have like 3 things coming off of a station. So like I couldn't have, pretend there's a station built here. I couldn't have something like this happening because that branches. So you do have to make these like certain kind of, not one way, but there are some stipulations to how you can build the track. If you have more than one guy here, so in our example here, I have two. I have a couple different things I could do. I could use one action and I could put down two tracks. So that would be one action and two tracks. Or you can build over water now, which takes basically a power of two. So if you had all four over here in one action, you could build four land, or you could build like two tiles over water. All right, so that's the track action. Let's go ahead and jump down here to build, because I think that lines up pretty well with the track action. And let's look at that. So if you build out to any of these empty spots, then when you take the build station, you're allowed to take one of these and build it at this empty junction. But remember, you are limited to what you have unlocked. So because we have unlocked nothing, we're basically down to these three. So if I wanted to build one of those, I would pick which one I wanted to build. I would pick this up. So let's say I wanted to build the warehouse. I would place it here. I would put these two back down on that station, and I could now place this one. So you'll see that was one way of getting an extra robot. Now, if you build a station and the robots that were on there match, so let's pretend I built the lab and put him out here. This guy, because he already matches, would go back in the bag because he's already at the station that he wants to be. Because you'll see when we start picking up and delivering people, we want to take them to a station that matches their color. So you'll see that build station only ever has one person here, because it only ever takes one power basically to build a station. If you wanted to build multiple stations, then you would have to take that action multiple times. Take this guy back. All right, the next one is move. So this is how many stations you can move between. So right now by default you can move between one. So we're gonna use our, come back up here, use this as an example. So if I want to use my action to move, I would take my train and I would move from this hub to this station. And that was one station move. If I had something built out to this station, but I only had one guy over here, if I wanted to then move there, I'd have to use my second action for that. If instead I had two guys here, that means I could use one action and move two stations. So the more people you have here, the faster you can get around to the different stations using only one action. Now, movement, there are some stipulations there. So I won't put out a bunch of stations, but I'll put out some tracks. So let's pretend I've got that, and you're going to use your imagination and pretend that there are actually stations built in between here. And let's just say we did that. All right, so if I moved and I took him and I moved him to this station, and that was the end of my turn, you want to always keep the train facing the same way, because one of the stipulations is this train has to get all the way to the end of the line before it can turn around and move back. So I can't move here, pick up some dudes, move back. Well, I can, but it takes an action. So I'll show you that in a second. But without taking a further action, you got to keep going the same way until you hit the end of the line. So that's really going to be where the efficiency of the game comes into play, where you don't have the time or rounds or turns, I should say, to just kind of like lazily move back and forth when it's not needed. You want to do something that is going to be efficient, where you're picking up the guys and getting them to their station quickly without sacrificing a whole lot of turns. So reverse train, which is the far one down here, much like build station, it's the only other one that just has this one. That is the action you can take if you have a copper guy in there, where at the beginning of my turn, if I'm pointed this way, I could take that action and I could turn him around. Now that does take an action, then I can start moving that way. If you get to the end of a line, then you do not have to take the reverse train action because there's nowhere left to go. You would just flip him over and you go back this way. So just make sure to check the rule book and familiarize yourself with that part of the game. All right, so the next 3 spots over here have to do with picking up and dropping off your passengers. So how do we get more robots? Well, you saw the one way there by building a station, but that's only going to get you the one. What do we do with all these guys out here? So the point of this is, first you have a capacity. So you'll see you can have a maximum of 4 robots or commuters in your train at one time. Then you have a separate amount that you can pick up and a separate amount you can drop off. Now these don't have to match up because you could have 4 people that you could fit in your train. You could come here and pick up 2. Let's say that's you only had 2 over here. You can pick up 2 there and then move here and pick up 2. So you did 2 actions of picking up of 2 each, which would be allowed if you had a guy right here, and then that would also be allowed because your capacity was 4. So what you're going to attempt to do is move to stations that have these guys out there, pick them up, and then take them back to a station that matches their color. When you drop them off, you take them out of your train and you put them on your board. So there's a certain kind of give and take here, where at the beginning you're going to want to get robots to their stations, drop them off so that you can start kind of powering your engine. No pun intended. Eventually you need to switch over to the commuters and picking them up and dropping them off at their colored stations, because that's going to be your main source of points at the end of the game. Your main source of points come from links in between stations, as well as how many commuters are on your board. Unless you have a special objective card, the robots aren't really going to count for any points. So if you spend your whole time just collecting robots and making this powerful, your opponent could be scooping up a ton of these guys and placing them out at their station, putting them on their board, and that's going to be points at the end of the game. So if you build one of these stations, so say we've unlocked one of these and you have taken the build action, the first player that builds is going to remove this and place this up there just like normal. They're going to take this and put it on their board, and then all of these are going to get picked up and dumped in the bag. So you'll see that if these get dumped in the bag first and only blue has unlocked it and yellow hasn't, blue could really start picking these guys up and taking them to another pink station, and yellow is kind of out of luck there with those because they have not unlocked them yet. And there's only this amount. These don't ever come back into rotation. They're going to sit on someone's board and stay there. So it's a bit of a race to kind of get to the commuters, unlock them, and start getting them placed places. So that's these 3. So refill station. So let's talk about that now that we've said we've unlocked some of these. When you go to a station, and again, I'll just use this for example. If we were at this station, and there could be guys on there, there could be no guys on there, we could take this refill station, and by default we have 1 power. That means we would take our little bag, which right now has none in it, but we'd reach in our bag, we'd shuffle around, we'd pull out 1 guy, and we'd put him on that station. If we had 4 guys here, or 3 guys plus the 1 printed, we'd draw in our bag and pull out 4 guys and stick them there. So you're going to pull out more people, fill the stations in order to take them elsewhere. Now, if you ever pull out one that matches the color of the station you're on, you just put that to the side and draw a replacement and then put that one back in the bag, because if they're already at the station that they want to go to, there's no sense in them being out there. If you go to the hub, you can also take the refill station action, and you'll do the same thing, but any robots that come out, since that's where they want to go, you place this aside and you keep pulling out until you reach your number over here of commuters, and now all the robots go back into the bag. So that's how you will handle refilling stations. And then lastly, we touched on this just a bit, but we have the adjust. So that's in order to help you adjust your robots, because you are probably not going to have all the colored robots you want, and you can't just place them over here and just leave them. That's probably never going to work. You're going to sometimes want to say, well, maybe this turn I usually have this extra action filled up, but this round I don't really care about having that extra action, and I really want that silver guy to unlock this. So you can adjust and move that down there, and maybe that allows you to do an action on the next turn to pick up a silver guy and replace that. Now there is a little icon here by adjust that only has the 3 robot colors, and that is to remind you that once you place a commuter down, so let's say I built this and put him right there, I can never move the commuters. The colored commuters go on your board and they stay. That is pretty interesting, because sometimes you'll get towards the end of the game and you'll notice that you have 2 down here. Let's say you're gunning for this one to get this bonus VP card, but you never pick that one up, and then you can't move these 2 back up here, and you can't move one of these down here. So it's almost like those 2 in effect are a little wasted. They're going to score you points at the end of the game, but I think that's kind of interesting how that works, how you can move robots, but you can't move commuters. It's pretty cool and does make you strategize a little bit, especially near the end of the game, to make sure that you don't just waste people. All right, so that was the actions. We talked about the left side, we talked about the right side, and then basically how the turns work is you're going to, obviously on your first round, put your robots out, get them on the board, and then first player is going to take their 2 actions, and then second player is going to take their 2 actions, or 3 or 4 if you fill those up, and you're just going to go back and forth, until the end of the game is triggered. There has to be 2 conditions met. So the first condition is that there has to be at least 1 station of each color that has to have been built out there. At that point, once that happens, then you play until the bag is empty. So remember, every time you build, well, not every time, the first time you build one of the color stations, you're going to pick these guys up and drop them in the bag. So the bag will be getting filled up as you play, but you're hopefully picking up these guys, taking them to a station, dropping them off in order to get them on the board, which is going to then deplete them from the bag. So those are your 2 conditions. At that point, once there are no more in the bag, you're going to basically finish that round until it gets back to player 1, and then each player gets 1 more turn. So 1 more set of 2 actions or more actions if they have that squared away. I guess lastly, just to mention it, you'll see that obviously these things are, the tiles are clear. Oh, I couldn't think of that word. So unlike some other train games, there is no blocking. So if yellow and blue both want to get out there, they could easily do that by building their tracks like that. So there's no actual blocking as far as the tracks go. It's not necessarily like a race to get them, the track somewhere, because if I go here and I build this station, you could easily build a track there and then use that station. Yes, the first person to build a station does get the extra person, which is nice, but there's not really any blocking. I would say the biggest interaction as far as stopping someone from doing something would be in that especially these three, that you build a station that messes up one of their objectives. So say that one of the objective cards is to not have one of these, a warehouse and an office hooked together, but your opponent might not know that you're trying to stay away from that, and they might build those two together. So that would make you miss out on that objective, but that's a little bit of the interaction you have there between players. So I think that's pretty cool. I will mention that in the solo game, obviously you're only playing with one set of tiles, and you kind of miss out on the cool clear tile laying down. You don't really notice it at all, but when you play with 2 or 3 or 4 players, it really looks cool as you start building that out on the board. All right, so what we will do now is we will just take a few turns back and forth. We'll simulate both sides and play it just a couple of rounds so you can see this game in action. All right, so welcome back. We are going to knock out a few rounds. We're going to play as blue being player 1. You'll see I've already got the 3 starting robots set out for blue and yellow. You'll see that yellow, I'm going with a slightly different strategy where I threw all 3 of them up there in the extra actions to maybe see if I can get that third action quicker, and see if I can just live with basically having a power of 1 for each of those to start out. So we'll see how that works. Real quickly, we never went over the objective cards that we got, so let's look at those real quick. So you can have a sample of them. So for this is the blue character. So this would be 2 points for every straight tile in my supply. So that's ones that I did not use. So if we don't use a lot of straight tiles, we'll get more points for that. This is 3 points for every set of lilac and purple commuters. So every complete set of lilac and purple commuters on our player board. So if we have these down here set up, then that would be 3 points for each. We get 5 points for a direct connection between a factory and a studio. And then lastly, so good thing this is not the yellow character, because this gives you 5 points at the end of the game if you have gotten no extra actions. So you'll see the red X's there. If you end the game and that place is completely empty, that will be 5 extra points. So again, remember that you can't score all of them without filling in this section down here. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so let's look at yellows real quick. All right, so 2 points for every tile not directly connected to a station. So if you have some tiles that are being used kind of to move around, honestly, I don't know how many times I've built, at least on this map. The stations are pretty close together, so I don't know. That might be a hard one. Here's another set, but this was for pink and coral commuters. Another 4 points for this direct connection, which is a factory and a store. And then for this guy, we get 3 points for every for filling up all of the unlocked passenger player boards. So each unlock passenger and build station section of your player board filled with passengers. 3 points there. So we'll see. Actually, we probably won't see because we're not going to play a whole game. So you'll just have to use your imagination about how that works. All right, so let's start with player 1. And again, I mentioned I like to keep something up here because when I take action 1, I move it off the board, and then I know I have to take action 2. If I unlock any of these, I kind of move the terrain down just so I can focus and kind of know what I'm doing. It wasn't too big of a deal in the multiplayer game, but I have noticed in the solo game, which again, if you want to jump to that chapter just to hear about the differences in the solo game, I've lost track of how many actions I'm doing. All right, so let's build some stuff because that's kind of what blue is doing here. And remember, I get points for having straight tiles in my bank or in my collection here at the end of the game. So we'll just use these two here and build something over some water. So let's get us a curved track out here. And let's go this way. So our first action is there. We use this track 2 because we built over water. And then we have our next action, which we are going to build a station. And let's just go ahead and grab us this gold guy here. And remember, we're going to place it down, put the robots back on there that don't match. And then we get to keep this gold guy and put him over here. So you know what? I'm going to... Let's put him right there, and so we can pick up 2 guys. All right, so that was action 1, action 2, so that guy is done. All right, so moving up to the yellow. So I'm a little more limited as far as what I can build out here, but remember, I do want a silver guy. Now, I cannot build a station right away. Because of that, I don't have anything in there. But I could, let's see. I don't have very many things I could do because I can't build over this water because I don't have 2 tracks. So that might have been a bad deal shoving everyone up in that section. But let's see. Because if blue would have built somewhere else, then I could have actually gone to their station and picked up something. All right, so we're going to waste our first space here and adjust. So you can see how that works. I meant to do that, guys. So we used one action to adjust one person, and I'm actually going to move that gold guy down there to build station. And now I'm going to use my second action to build a track, but I want my track to come out here because I really want to get a silver guy eventually. All right, so that was those 2. So back to blue. I'm just going to, since I have this guy down here at the build station, I don't really want to move him yet, so we could just keep building some here, and that could actually take away some of yellow's ability. So my first action, I'll build 2 tracks for 1, and so let's go and throw this out there and this. And then for my second action, I will build again, and this time I think I will build a silver. No, I'll build a lab, because if I built the silver, I'd have to toss 2 guys. With the bronze, I just got to toss 1 guy. So let's fit this in here. There we go. Pick up that guy. So these 3 go back there. Remember, this guy matches, so he's going to go into our bag and be the first guy to go hang out by himself in the nice bag. All right, and then, oh, these are kind of, so one thing about this game is like these kind of fit in a little screwy sometimes. So there you go. All right, so I got this bronze guy to deal with. So actually, you know what? I'm going to stick him here on the drop off because now I can pick up 2 guys and carry 2 guys and drop off 2 guys all at once. All right, so back up here to yellow. So he is going to build a station. So move that off because he wants to go ahead and get this silver guy. So we'll put that here. The silver guy matches, so he's going to go into the bag. And so now we've got this. And you know what? He is thinking that he is going to go ahead and put it. He's going to drop it there because he wants to be able to unlock those pink passengers first. All right, so that was his turn. So back down here to blue. All right, so let's pick up some guys here. All right, so we're going to use our first action to move. So we're going to go to this station because we can move 1 station with this. And now with my second action, I can pick up, but I have a ability to pick up 2 guys here. So I'm going to pick up, I'm going to really just pick up this guy. You'll see, because if I pick him up, I can't drop him off here. I'm going to have to carry him all the way back there. And that's kind of a waste of space because I don't really need him until later on. So I'll pick up that guy. Remember, the train's going to stay pointing that way because I do have to get to the end of the line unless I want to use this little reverse train thing here. All right, so my turn, it was a move and a pickup. So I think you can see that the game starts kind of going quickly unless you get stuck in a sort of mode of you can't figure out what you want to do and you're trying to calculate out like 4 turns from now, which I guess you could do. So let's see. We will do... All right, so for this guy, we're going to move as his first action, and we'll pick up. All right, so that was his turn. Back down here to blue. So his first action, we're going to move. And then we will drop off. So that's going to allow me to drop this guy off, but then open up a space in my train for other people. So what I'll do is I'll take him and I'm going to put him there because I want to unlock those. So that goes back up there. It's at the end of the line, so basically I'll just turn it around so I know I can go that way. And we're back up here to the yellow. So we're going to do a move, one station to another. And then remember, all robots can get dropped off at the hub. So at this point, he will use his second to drop off one guy, and he can put the bronze up here. So he's going to put that there, which is going to unlock these areas. Or, I'm sorry, these guys. But they don't just unlock, boom, he's got to actually build a station. So that was his turn. I'll put that like that. All right, so back down here to blue. So my first turn, I can pick up, and I can pick up 2 guys, and I can carry 2 guys on one action. So I'll use my one action, and I'll pick up a silver, and I'll pick up a gold, if I can get him in the train. All right, and then my second action will be to move one station, so we'll go there. And the guys fall over. Hopefully they're not injured. All right, back up here to yellow. So he wants to use his first action to build a track. So let's take this and let's just say we're going to do something like that. Remember, this is not going over water, so that's why he can just use the 1. And then the second action, he is going to use his gold guy that's been sitting down here for a while and build a station, and he's going to build one of these. So we take the first one of this out, and the guy that's on it, he gets. So we'll put that in our board in a second. And we'll do something like that. And then we're going to take our bag, and we're going to stick all these guys that are left in here. So now yellow can get these guys out and take them to those stations. This blue guy cannot yet. So now remember, we've got this guy to fill in. So you know, I'll just go ahead and there's no real silver guys. Let's just put it up here to score some more points. All right, moving down here to blue. So we're at a gold station and we have a gold guy, so we're going to drop off. I could drop off 2 if I had 2 gold, but the silver guy doesn't want to be at the gold station, so I'm going to use the action and just drop off him, and he is going to go there and unlock those lilac looking dudes. And then I will go ahead and use my second turn to pick up the other silver guy that's here, because remember, I can have 2, and I'm heading back this way, and I'm going to drop those off on my next turn. All right, back up here to yellow. So I want to show you a refill action. So at any point, you are allowed to dip into the bag and like see what guys are in the bag. You just can't look at them as you're drawing them out. So my first action is going to be refill a station, and I can refill it with one guy. And then remember, if you pull out any robots while you're refilling the hub, they don't do anything. So guess what? The only other guys in here are these pink guys. So I'm guaranteed to get a pink guy out. So boom, and then I will pick up my one pink guy and put him in there for this next turn. All right, back to blue. So I'm going to move with this turn. I'm going to drop off. And remember, I have two drop-offs, or two people powering that, so I can drop both of them off in one turn. So now I've got these two silver guys. So I could say, well, maybe let's put him on the refill station because I will get these purple guys soon. And then I do want access to these pink guys, so we'll work on that. All right, so we'll do one more yellow turn and then one more of each. And I think that will give you enough viewing of how the turns work. So for the yellow, we're going to move and then drop off as I knock everyone out of the station. So we've got this pink guy. Let's just go ahead and keep filling these up here, because if you fill all that down there, then I'm going to get a lot of points for the pinks. All right, so back to purple. I think I really want to build and get this lilac guy out here. So I would have these two tracks, or I could build two. I'm going to use those two and build over some water. So I could do something like that. And then that would be the first action. And I'll use my little gold guy down here, and I will build this. So I'm going to take that and stick it there for a second. I'll put the store there. And then these guys are going to go into the bag. So that dilutes the bag a little bit for my opponent, because now when they pull things out, they're not guaranteed to pull out pink anymore. They might pull out some lilac guys, and they will put them at the station, and then they can't really do anything with those. Remember, I have my other lilac guy I need to do something with. So let's just say we're going to stick him down here in order to try to work towards some more bonus points. All right, so last turn would be this yellow guy, sorry, orange. Oh, I was thrown off because of that train. Like, what was that doing up there? So, one thing you could do is, this wouldn't be very smart, but just so I can show you how the extra action works, is we could use one adjust, and we could say, we want to take this and move it there. And then we could say we're going to use adjust again from our second action and move this guy up there, which would be kind of dumb because at that point we're locking this back, so we can't move those pink guys. But I just want to show you that because we unlock this extra action, it triggers like the same round. So then we would have our third action. So then maybe I then, pick up one of these guys. If there was a silver guy there, I could pick him up and on the next turn bring him back and fill that back in. But maybe I just pick up this gold guy. And then from then on out, yellow is going to have 1 action, 2 action, 3 action every round, where blue has only got the 2 actions. So hopefully that gives you an idea of exactly what's going on with the multiplayer game. Again, remember, you're going to play until there's at least one of these colored stations out on the board, and then when your bag runs out, then you will play one more round, and then game is over. There's a little score pad. Basically, most of your score is going to come from the points over here, as far as you get 1 point for every pink guy or lilac guy that is on your board. If you fill up these columns, you get an extra point per person. The coral and the purple are a little more expensive and harder to get, so they're worth 2 points, plus 1 if you fill this up. Every link, so like this would be a link, so it doesn't matter that it's 2 tracks. This scores 1 point, this scores 1 point. So it's just a link is two stations that are connected. You'll get a point per every link that you've built. And then if you fill up one of these rows, you get an extra point. So it could be 3 points for every link if you filled that up. So you'll count those up. Then you'll basically count up your objectives. So you'll go through your objectives. You'll figure out which one scored the most. And then you'll look down here. And if you have any of these filled up, then you'll do the second and third most. Add all those up. And boom, the player with the highest score wins the game. All right, so we got one more chapter. If you're interested in jumping down to see how the solo game works, we won't really be playing through any of that. We will just kind of talk about the differences. If not, and you are done because you say solo gaming is not for me, then I just want to say thank you for checking out this video. Please go see the website at boardgamebreakdown.com. We got a lot of text reviews up there. Please subscribe to the channel. You can find us on Mastodon and Instagram, and we look forward to putting out some more content. Thanks, everyone. All right, welcome back. If you stuck around to see how the solo game is slightly different from the normal game. So the main differences is really in the setup. So you'll still have your board, you'll have your 3 robots that you'll start out with. The main difference is how many of these passengers are going to be out on the board. When we set up a 2-player game, we remove 5 of every passenger. If you have a 3 or 4-player game, there's different amounts you're going to remove. But if you're playing the 1-player game, you're going to remove 3 of every passenger. So I stuck some back in, but what that does is it gives us these extra robots, and you can maybe hear them in the bag. So if you watch the other section, we didn't have any robots after we filled up the board in the bag, but now we do. So why do we have robots in the bag? This is going to keep track of how many rounds you are using, because that will affect your score at the end of the game. So at the beginning of each round, even the first one, you're going to pull a robot out of the bag, and you're going to sit him over there. He is out of the game. You're going to take your turn. You're going to do your actions. You're going to build tracks, whatever you want to do. And then before your next turn, you're going to reach back in here, and boom, you're going to take out another robot and put it in there and move on. Now, obviously, if you start building these stations and you drop those guys in the bag, you could, pull one of these out of the bag and put him over there. And then he's out of the game. So basically, you'll continue to do that, and at some point, you're going to run out of dudes in the bag, and as soon as you run out of guys in the bag, the game is over. All right, so what else do these little guys that are coming out of the bag do? Well, they are going to cause you to lose points at the end of the game. So what's going to happen is, obviously, if you never put any of these guys in a bag, you've only probably got, 8 robots in there to start out with. You're going to have 8 turns and the game's going to be over. So you're probably not going to get too much done that way. But at the end of the game, you're going to score all your points like you normally do, score off of the passengers, score off the links on the tracks, score off your objectives, and then you're going to count up how many turns you took. So maybe somewhere, let's say around 30, and at the bottom of the score pad, that's going to be a big negative 30. So you have some kind of neat weighing to do here, where if you drop these guys, you unlock and you put them in the bag, it's going to be more turns that you get to take because there'll be more people in the bag. But if you are not making up for that in points, that's going to be some negative, or potentially a lot of negative points at the end of the game. The only other big difference is once you pass out your objectives, you will take this deck, that is the one that has the different stations on it. You'll draw 2 more of these, you'll flip them over, and this will show you 2 things that you cannot build this whole game. So you can never have a track between an office and an embassy, or a warehouse and a studio. So you can just put those over to one of the sides as a reminder. And I believe the big thing for that is because in a multiplayer game, you do have some jockeying of positioning as far as someone might build the store over here, and maybe I didn't really want it there, but I don't have any control of that. In a single player game, you obviously have control of where you're going to build everything. So this gives you some more stipulations to kind of play against and make it so you don't just have free range over everything. Other than that, the game is basically played exactly like any other multiplayer version of this. So I'm not going to go through the actions. If you missed that because you skipped ahead, go back to the chapter on the actions, and I will describe all these one by one in a multiplayer setting, but they really don't act any different in the solo setting. So thanks for sticking around to see how the solo game works. I think it's excellent. It is pretty punishing though. Sometimes I end up with like single digit numbers because of all those negatives. I think it's a little more relaxing as a multiplayer game. But if you like that kind of puzzly feel, and where in your solo game you just want to somehow figure out how to be the most efficient, and when you get a big score, it does feel really good. You are just playing for the highest score, but there is a kind of funny little chart in the back that gives you the different, 0 to 10, you're a janitor, 11 to 20, you're this, and it breaks it all the way down to some insane amount of points that I don't understand how anyone would ever score, but maybe those people exist out there. But it's really fun solo, and obviously it's cool having the flip side and playing the other map, and there's other maps you can actually buy and try out, so it has a lot of replayability there. So again, thank you guys all for watching. Please go to the website boardgamebreakdown.com if you want to check out any of our text reviews. You can find us on Instagram, you can find us on Mastodon, and obviously subscribe so you can keep seeing the videos we put out. I appreciate anyone who stuck around and took a look at our content, and we look forward to making more. Thanks, everyone.